Very good evening to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome each one of you for the exclusive webinar on vaccine and vaccination and overview. This session has been organized under the aegis of the Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee of BCIC. We would like to specially thank Mr. Praveen Iyer, Chairman, Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee of BCIC, and Managing Director, Relicare Tech Services Private Limited, for curating this session for the benefit of our members. For the participants who have joined who are not aware about BCIC, BCIC is a 45-year-old chamber based in Bangalore, which caters to the needs of the industry and needs across the state of Karnataka. We have been an exclusive interface between the industries of Karnataka and Government of India and Government of Karnataka. And most of our recommendations and policies that we have wanted to be implemented in the state of Karnataka has been accepted by the state government, and we have been very actively playing a role for the benefit of the chamber. And this year we had started this pharma and healthcare expert committee headed by Mr. Praveen Iyer, and he has taken the lead. And we hope that we will be able to do some needs to the pharma sector and the healthcare sector. The session will be addressed by Dr. Anand Lakar, Senior Manager, Global Medical Affairs and Clinical Development, Vaccines and Biologicals, Serum Institute of India. The session will be moderated by Mr. Praveen Iyer, Chairman of the Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee of BCIs. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry Commerce, we sincerely thank Dr. Anand for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining today's session. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. The speaker will respond to the question during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the speaker and shall revert back to you accordingly. May I now invite Mr. Praveen Iyer to set the context for today's subject and also moderate the session. Thanking you all once again. Over to you, Mr. Praveen Iyer.
Yeah, thank you, Prithvi. You will excuse me for putting on the webcam because I don't want people to think who the ghost I am. Yeah. Welcome all of you participants to this session on vaccine and vaccination and overview, which is organized by the Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee of the BCICI, the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Special welcome to some of my colleagues from the office. Pleased to see them here. It's almost getting to about a year that we have been hammered by this pandemic, and we are all waiting for this silver bullet called the vaccine to be available. Now, this panacea of all our problems, almost the golden bullet is already at our doorsteps. Many countries, many large countries have already started vaccinating their citizens. And in about 8-10 days, the vaccination program will roll out in India as well. During this year of pandemic, almost a year of pandemic, all of us in some sense have become epidemiologists, virologists, statisticians. We know about science and vaccination now more than anybody else, or we claim to know more than. We have been reading, we have been listening to the primetime TV debate hollering at us. We have listened to some experts as well. The WhatsApp university is at full flow 24/7, bombarding us with never-ending forwardings. And in all this, we have gathered some information. Probably at the Pharma and Healthcare Committee, we thought that it could be a good time to get one of the experts to speak to us on the subject of vaccine and vaccination, which has been dominating the headline and our headspace. We're happy in this context to have Dr. Anand Lakar, who has agreed to be with us today and make a presentation to all of us on this subject. Dr. Anand is a young, accomplished doctor. He did his MBBS from India and then went on to do his MS and PhD in pharmacology in US. He has studied in New York Medical College as well as taught students there. A very active person, came back to India, has worked for some prestigious Indian company. And presently he is the Senior Manager for Global Affairs and Vaccine and Biologics with Serum Institute of India. Now, as all of us know, Serum Institute of India with their Covishield vaccine is one of the vaccine which has been approved for emergency use by the government of India. And Dr. Anand Lakhar has, I presume, is very closely involved in the development of that vaccine. Dr. Anand will make a presentation to us that will be about 20-30 minutes, and then we will have a small Q&A of 10 to 15 minutes. As Prithvi explained, we will try and take as many questions. So in case during the presentation you still want to ask something, only use chatbot. Do not use any other mode of communication so that we don't disturb Dr. Anand's thought process. And after that, in the Q&A session, we will try and take as much questions as we can. Yeah. So sit back, enjoy this webinar, and thanking you. And on behalf of all of us and also the BCIC, I welcome Dr. Anand and ask him to make his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Anand.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And it's great to be invited for this webinar. Bangalore is actually a city which is very close to my heart. So previously, before joining Serum, I was associated with Mylan Pharmaceuticals, and I was based in Bangalore. So it was a wonderful time which I had over there. And growing up, my inspiration or my hero was Anil Kumble, and he's also from Bangalore. So it's wonderful that the Bangalore Chamber of Commerce have invited me to talk on this topic, vaccines and vaccination, which probably has become the #1 trending topic now. A year back, probably nobody was that curious about what are vaccines or what are vaccination. But in the year of the pandemic, it's nice to see the enthusiasm and the interest which people have in vaccines, and it's great to see that. So what I'll do is I'll quickly share a slide. I want this to be more of a interactive session, so I would love you guys having your questions, and I would be glad to answer the queries and the questions. So with that, I would like to start off. So my topic is going to be vaccines and vaccination. And as you can see on this initial slide, I got the logos from two universities, Georgetown and New York Medical College, where I was an alumni, and where I believe I actually truly learned.
Anand, sorry to interrupt you. We can't see the slides. Dr. Anand, sorry to interrupt.
Okay, let me just try it again, sir.
We can see the desktop, Dr. Anand.
Okay,
let me just see your desktop and the file name.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay,
go ahead.
Great. And my voice is clear or it's breaking?
Yeah, it's audible.
Okay, great.
Please go ahead.
So yeah, so glad now everybody can see the slides. And as I was saying, the reason why I have the logos of these two universities, Georgetown and New York Medical Colleges, that's where I actually learned to do research, and I'm very grateful for the training which I underwent there. So I'll start with this disclaimer. So Sir Mr. Iyer introduced. So I'm associated with Serum Institute in their Medical Affairs and Clinical Development team. But this talk today, which I'm going to give, this is basically my own thoughts and my own opinions, which I'll be presenting over here, and they do not represent the views of the employer or any of the universities which I was affiliated to, or any other groups which I'm a part of. And secondly, the information which we'll be discussing over here. It is for the general information of everyone. I'm not. It should not be considered as any medical advice. This is just based on whatever data is available. I'll be sharing my opinions, and at the end of the day, with regards to any medical treatments, everybody should obviously be following the advice of their treating physician. So with that, I would like to start off with this first slide. So now I think people must be wondering why are we seeing dragons and why are we seeing soldiers and what exactly is going on over here. So this is basically how our immune system works. So if you see these soldiers who are attacking on the left side where it is written that inflammation site, imagine they are the viruses and the bacteria which are attacking us. Then on this right hand side, these blue soldiers which you see, they are macrophages, and they are the defense system of our body. And then over here you see this guy with the cannon, which are the B cells, and then these ones over here, these are the T cells. And then you have these two dragons which also represent our immunity. So the point I was trying to make over here is the human body has got an acquired immunity and it has got an innate immunity. So the innate immunity consists of these different macrophages or the other cells which we might be having. And when it comes to the acquired immunity, then we have the T cells and the B cells, and this acquired immunity is what we try to develop when we are giving vaccines. So basically the same thing which I was telling, the immune system, we have the innate immunity and the adaptive or the acquired immunity. So innate immunity, they can be any physical barriers like the skin, or they can be cellular defenses, any chemicals. Adaptive immunity, it can be active or it can be passive. And when we talk about vaccination, we are talking about adaptive active immunity. So there is two ways we can get active immunity. For example, somebody develops chicken pox during their childhood. They get immunity against chicken pox. So that is active immunity through a natural way. If they receive a vaccine against chicken pox, then again that is adaptive immunity, and that is active adaptive immunity which is developed through the vaccination. Passive immunity, it could be due to certain antibodies, or it could be due to antibodies which we get from the mother. So the mother to child passing of antibodies is an example of a passive immunity. So coming to some definitions I think these words have been very common this past year, antigen and antibody. So antigen is a live or inactivated substance capable of producing an immune response. So it could be any virus, any bacteria, or any substance capable of producing an immune response. An antibody is a protein molecule produced by the cells to help eliminate an antigen. So whenever an antigen or any foreign substance is introduced in our body, an antibody is produced against that substance in order to counter that. So that's why we have an antigen and we have an antibody. So a virus is an example of an antigen. An antibody is developed in response to that virus, or it could be in response to the vaccination. So any antigen is going to trigger off an antibody response. Vaccine then. So vaccine is a product which stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, thus protecting the person from that disease. So the whole idea about vaccine is to stimulate the immune system in order to produce an immune response, thereby the person will be protected from that disease. And what is vaccination? Vaccination, it is the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. So we got vaccines and we have got vaccination. So this is a picture of Dr. Edward Jenner. So we all remember Dr. Edward Jenner, the person who developed vaccine against smallpox. So this is a picture of Dr. Edward Jenner, and he performed his first vaccination on a child by the name of James Phipps, and that was on May 14, 1796. So that is when vaccination was proposed with the advent of the smallpox vaccine. So what are the different types of vaccines? So vaccines, they can be live attenuated. A classical example of a live attenuated vaccine will be oral polio, or it can be tuberculosis, measles. These are all examples of live attenuated vaccines. They can be inactivated vaccines. A classical example of that is the inactivated polio virus. They can be subunit vaccines, which could, example for that could be a pneumococcal vaccine, or they could be toxoid or inactivated toxins. The example of that is tetanus toxoid or diphtheria toxoid. What do we mean when we say a live attenuated vaccine? So a live attenuated vaccine, it can contain the whole bacteria or viruses. However, they have been weakened so that they create a protective immune response but do not cause disease in the healthy people. So if you talk about oral polio, so take the polio virus and you attenuate it so that it gets weakened and it mounts an immune response, but it won't cause a disease in healthy people. So that is the idea behind a live attenuated vaccine. Second is inactivated vaccines. They also contain whole bacteria or viruses. However, unlike live attenuated vaccines, they are the bacteria or the viruses, they have been killed, or they can contain small parts of the bacteria or viruses, and they do not cause disease. So live attenuated vaccine, the viruses are active, but they are weakened. In an inactivated vaccine, they are killed. There is a third category of vaccines, that is toxoid vaccines. So they contain toxoids which trigger a strong immune response. So toxoids, so basically all bacteria, viruses, they produce toxins. So you modify those toxins and the toxin, and you convert them into a toxoid so that they can still mount an immune response, but they are not harmful to the body. And then we have got conjugated vaccines, which contain polysaccharides and which are sugars from the surface of the bacteria, and which can be attached to a diphtheria or a tetanus toxoid protein. So in general, these are the different types of vaccines which are available: live attenuated, inactivated, toxoids, conjugated vaccines, which are commonly available. An important terminology which a lot of people must have been hearing in the news, in the press, is vaccine efficacy. That vaccine A has got an efficacy of 100%, vaccine B has got an efficacy of 90%, vaccine C has got an efficacy of 95%. So what exactly do we mean by vaccine efficacy? In simple terms, when we talk about vaccine efficacy, you basically take people and give them the vaccine. Then you take people in whom you don't give the vaccine. So you have got a vaccinated group and an unvaccinated group. And then you see what is the infection rate in the vaccinated group, and you see what is the infection rate in the unvaccinated group. So basically what you do is you measure the risk of disease among the vaccinated and the unvaccinated people and determine the percentage reduction in the risk of disease among the vaccinated people relative to the unvaccinated people. So for example, if your vaccine has got a 90% efficacy, that tells you that 90% of the people who have got the vaccine won't develop the infection. If the efficacy of your vaccine is 60%, that means 60% of the people who have got the vaccine, the chances of infection developing them are less because the efficacy is 60%. And of course, greater the percentage reduction of illness in the vaccinated group, greater the vaccine efficacy. So so if you have got the vaccinated group and if you got the unvaccinated group, more number of cases in the unvaccinated group and less number of cases in the vaccinated group, obviously your vaccine efficacy is going to be higher. So now we have talked about vaccines, but have they really been effective? So this is a nice comparison over here, and the references are noted below. So what you see over here is you see the different diseases, like say smallpox, diphtheria. You see the morbidity, 20th century morbidity, and you see the 2017 reported cases, and you see the decrease. So ever since the advent of these vaccines, there has been a 100% decrease in the smallpox cases. There has been a 100% decrease in diphtheria. There has been a 95% decrease in pertussis. There has been a 94% decrease in tetanus. There has been a 100% decrease in polio. There has been a more than 99% decrease in measles, 96% decrease in mumps, more than 99% decrease in rubella, more than 99% decrease in H influenza. This is the US data, obviously, but it tells you how effective the vaccination has been in countering all these diseases. Another comparison which they have over here is you look at the pre-vaccine era annual estimate of hepatitis A in the US, and you see the 2016 estimate, and you look at the percentage decrease. So ever since the advent of vaccines, there has been a 97% decrease in hepatitis A in the US. There has been a 68% decrease in hepatitis B. There has been almost 89% decrease in children less than 5 years of age in pneumococcal infections. There has been a 51% decrease in rotavirus. There has been a 98% decrease in varicella. So this basically illustrates how powerful a tool vaccination and vaccines and immunization are available to us for the benefit of public health. Of course, so coming to vaccine development, we looked at what are the types of vaccines, and let's look at vaccine development. In a nutshell, developing a vaccine is a long and it's a very laborious and a very labor intensive and complicated process. We have got discovery and target validation. Then we have got the preclinical stage. We have got a manufacturing development. We have got phase 1 studies for safety. Then we have phase 2 studies where you have to look at safety as well as immunogenicity. Immunogenicity is nothing but the ability of the vaccine to mount an immune response. Because if you are giving a vaccine, the whole idea of vaccine is to form antibodies against that particular disease so that a person is protected. So if the vaccine, it does not have good immunogenicity, if it cannot mount a good immune response, then there is no point in having that vaccine. So that safety and immunogenicity is estimated in phase 2 trials. Safety, efficacy, and regulatory approval is again done in large scale phase 3 trials, because you have to show that the vaccine is efficacious, it is safe. You need to have both. Just having a vaccine which is safe but not efficacious is not useful, and having a vaccine which has got efficacy but no safety is again, there's no point in having such a vaccine. So there are these large scale phase 3 trials carried out in 20,000, 30,000 participants to look at the safety, efficacy, and regulatory approval. And then finally, we have the regulatory review. So this is a very complicated process for development of vaccines. So coming to COVID-19, COVID-19 infections, it emerged in Wuhan, China in December 2019. It was declared as a global pandemic by the World Health Organization on March 11, 2020. There have been more than 70 million cases of COVID, SARS-CoV-2 till date. It has emerged as a major pandemic. So which are the different vaccines now which are available for countering this? So this is I would recommend all the listeners for today's webinar to go through this website. So New York Times have got this interactive coronavirus vaccine tracker, which is pretty useful, which gives you all the details about all the different vaccines which are currently in different stages of development. So the most common or the two most leading vaccines have been Pfizer and Moderna. Those are the mRNA vaccines, and we'll look in the subsequent slides what do we mean by an mRNA vaccine. So they are approved in Canada. They got emergency use in the US and other countries. Same with Moderna. It's got emergency use in the US. And then we have got the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is an adenovirus vaccine, which has got emergency use in Britain, India, Argentina, Mexico. We have got some of the top vaccine companies. Johnson & Johnson is currently working on a vaccine. Then we've got some Chinese companies who have also developed an inactivated vaccine against coronavirus, and so on. So coming to the different types of COVID vaccines. So let's look at what is viral vector vaccine. So this has been developed by the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca, and now this is available in India as well. So what we do in a viral vector vaccine is we use an unrelated harmless virus to deliver the SARS-CoV-2 genetic material. So the COVID virus has got this protein called as the spike protein, which is used in a lot of vaccines to generate the immune response. So in this particular viral vector vaccine, what scientists have done is they have taken an adenovirus and they have clubbed or stuck this spike protein on that adenovirus, and through that it is delivered to the cells. So this adenovirus delivers this spike protein of the coronavirus to the cells, and once it reaches the cells, our body senses that there is an antigen, and it triggers off an immune response. And over a period of time, we develop an immune memory so that our body can fight off the COVID infection in the future. So our body has got this unique ability that when it is exposed to an antigen for the first time, there is this immune memory, or it stores this information, and during the subsequent infection with the same antigen, it can mount an effective immune response. So it generates a pretty good immune response. The storage is at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And previously we had the Ebola vaccine, which was a viral vector vaccine. And for COVID-19, we have got the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is a viral vector vaccine, which has been approved in India, in UK for COVID-19. Next, we have got genetic vaccines, that is the mRNA vaccines. These are the two most common examples for these are Moderna and Pfizer. So now mRNA is a very interesting technology. So if we go back to biology, we have DNA, which is converted into messenger RNA, which is then converted into a protein. So that is called as the central dogma of biology. So what scientists have done for this mRNA vaccine is they have taken this mRNA vaccine and they deliver it through some capsule to the cell. And once it goes to the cell, the mRNA, it can go there and it can use the genetic material to make the SARS-CoV-2 protein, which is then recognized by the immune system to trigger a response. So the advantage for this is like this is low cost, it is fast to develop. However, it needs to be stored at high temperatures. The Pfizer vaccine needs to be stored at -70. The Moderna vaccine needs to be stored at -20. However, these vaccines have also got a good efficacy, more than 90%, based on the studies which have been carried out so far. Third type of COVID vaccines which we have got is the inactivated vaccines, which we talked about previously. So inactivated vaccines, they contain the killed virus, which is recognized by the immune system, and it triggers a response without causing illness. Some of the Chinese companies, they have developed this vaccine for COVID-19. The consideration is that this needs to be administered with an adjuvant to boost an immune response. So many times vaccines, they contain the substance called as an adjuvant, which can help boost the immune response. And then we have got the attenuated vaccines. We already talked about live attenuated vaccines. We talked about the oral polio vaccine. So this contains the weakened COVID vaccine. This contains the weakened COVID virus, which is then recognized by the immune system to trigger a response without causing the illness. In clinical trials, we have this company called as Codagenix, which is currently developing a live attenuated vaccine for COVID-19. Then we have got protein vaccines. Novavax and Sanofi are two companies which are working with this. So they contain certain proteins from the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which are recognized by the immune system to trigger a response. So they can contain whole proteins, fragments, or many protein particles packed into nanoparticles. They have got good previous safety records. They are usually administered with an adjuvant to boost the immune response. So currently the hepatitis B vaccine, which is in human use, is a protein-based vaccine. So coming to the common FAQs, so I thought that I will just, for the last couple of minutes of my talk, I'll just talk about some of the common FAQs, which I keep on hearing and which you keep on hearing in the news all the time. One of the common questions which people ask is, once I take the vaccine, do I need to wear a mask and do I need to practice physical distancing? So now the thing which we all need to remember is all these vaccines which are currently available, they all are going to reduce severe COVID-19. They're going to prevent severe COVID-19 in the participants. But till date, we don't have enough evidence if they block the transmission of the virus from one person to another. So in other words, people who take the vaccine, they will be protected against COVID from developing severe COVID, but we still don't know whether they will transmit the virus to the next person. So that is why, along with the vaccine, we still need to wear masks. We need to still practice physical distancing. We still need to use hand sanitizers, and we need to maintain all these precautions because COVID is still evolving area. Every day we have new evidences, new data which comes. So based on the current information which we have available, along with vaccination, we also need to practice social distancing, masking in order to ensure that all of us are protected against COVID. Another question which people ask is, how did the process for approving a vaccine move so quickly? Because we talk about vaccines taking 10, 15 years and so on. So there are several reasons for this. First is, many times people do phase 1 and phase 2. In this, because of the pandemic situation, companies have combined phase 1 and phase 2 studies to assess the safety and the immune response. Secondly, because of the high number of new cases of COVID-19, differences in the disease risk between those who receive the vaccine and those who receive the placebo or the comparison vaccine can be measured more quickly. Because of the high number of COVID cases, you can reach the endpoints faster. Thirdly, many vaccine manufacturers, they typically wait till phase 3 before they start making large investments in manufacturing. But because of this unique pandemic situation, we have got companies which have invested heavily in building their manufacturing capacity to produce large doses of vaccines before the findings of the phase 3 trials were available. So that is also one of the reasons why we have been able to move so quickly. So the important thing to remember that all the vaccines which are available currently, they have gone through the rigorous testing and processing, and the scientific ethical integrity has been maintained, and no shortcuts or no other shortcuts have been followed. So all the data, all the vaccines which are available, they have got excellent safety. They have gone through the rigorous regulatory processes, and we should be very grateful that we are living in this age where it has been possible to come up with a vaccine in such a quick time due to the combined efforts of multiple governments and multiple scientists and researchers working together. Another question which I saw people ask me is, can somebody get COVID-19 from the vaccine? As I said, the current vaccines which are available, they're either the mRNA vaccines, they're the inactivated vaccines, they're the viral vector vaccines. So it's not possible to get COVID-19 from those, because none of them, they are using the active virus. So it's not possible to get COVID-19 from those vaccines. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk, and just this one picture which I would like to share. So These are my two mentors who have helped me build up my research acumen and develop my research skills. The one gentleman in the left coat is an Argentinian physician by the name of Dr. Nashletti. He's very well known for his research in the field of prostaglandins. And on the gentleman on the right is his name is Dr. Mike Wolin. So I don't know how many of our history buffs over here. So in 1998, the Nobel Prize for discovery of nitric oxide was given to three US physicians / scientists. One of them was Dr. Louis Narrow, and Dr. Mike Wolin, the gentleman you see on the right, was working with Dr. Louis Narrow on that project, and his name was mentioned in the Nobel Prize acceptance speech. So, just thought that I would share the picture of these two outstanding scientists who have mentored countless number of doctors and physicians. So with that, I would like to conclude, and I'd like to open the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anand. That was a very riveting presentation. It was good. You're brave to explain a very complex subject in as a common layman language as possible. We appreciate that, and also appreciate you have been mentored and trained and worked with some very notable people. Nitric oxide reminds me of laughing gas. That's the only thing I know. But thank you so much for the presentation. We'll open the floor for questions. Prithvi, where are the questions? Can you see them?
So it's in there in the chat box, huh?
Yeah. Sorry.
There's a question from Mr. Arun Kumar. Which category is the COVID vaccine developed now falling under?
So,
You want to repeat the question, doctor?
Yeah. So basically, if you're talking with regards to India, right? So India, we have got two vaccines which have got emergency authorization. One is the COVID AstraZeneca serum vaccine, which falls under a viral vector vaccine, which I was talking about. And then the other one which we have is from Bharat Biotech, and that is an inactivated vaccine.
And there's a question from Mr. Karunakar Murthy. Are these subjects, both vaccinated and unvaccinated groups, are exposed to pathogen, virulent virus during the vaccine clinical trial? This is a question.
No, they are not. It's unethical. So basically, we wait for them to catch infection, and because there have been high COVID cases, and that is why I said, as I mentioned previously. So we basically have two groups. One is vaccinated, one is unvaccinated, and we have a follow-up period, and we wait for them to develop infection naturally. We do not induce an infection. That is unethical. You cannot do that.
The other question is, which one is the most effective vaccine? Example, protein vaccine or mRNA or inactivated or viral, etc.
Right. So that is a good question. I mean, it's very difficult to classify exactly which one is the most effective, for the simple reason that people just look at the efficacy data, that vaccine A has got an efficacy of 90, vaccine B has got an efficacy of 95. So when you talk about vaccination, it's not only the efficacy, you also need to ensure that the logistics are in place and people get the vaccine is available to everyone. So based on that, I would say that every vaccine has got its advantages and disadvantages. The Pfizer vaccine, obviously, it has got a high efficacy of more than 90%, but it has got a disadvantage that you need to store it and transport it at -70, which is extremely difficult. Then you have got the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has got an efficacy close to 70%, but it can be stored at 2 to 8 degrees. So the advantage over there is it's easier to transport. So I would say that it's very difficult to pick and choose which one is good and which one is not. the minimum criteria which the FDA had stated that as long as the vaccine has got an efficacy more than 50%, it has got good safety, it can get emergency use authorization.
The next question, doctor, is from Anusha. What will happen one dose of SII and Bharat Biotech taken by a patient?
I doubt highly anything like that would happen because I'm sure that people will either be getting one of the two. So I really doubt that something like that will happen where people will get different doses of different vaccines.
Thank you, doctor. This is from Dr. Veena. Do these vaccines are effective against the COVID variant infection, which is originating now?
Yeah, so that is a good question, ma'am. I mean, it's too early to comment on that because it's still an evolving area and people are still not aware that how exactly are these new strains working. But based on the evidence which is available as of now, these vaccines seem to be working. But again, we need for more information to come in. But as of now, it's like the vaccine which we have are doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a question on any thoughts on Sinopharm vaccine, please?
So again, that is an inactivated vaccine by one of the Chinese companies. So I believe that they must have undergone their rigorous training and stringent quality checks. Yeah, I'm not aware if what's the data they've shared in the public domain because so AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna, a lot of the data is available in the public domain. I'm not sure about the Chinese vaccines. I haven't come across that.
Prithvi, I'll take that next question.
Yeah,
there was a question from Bhushan, but just to tell Mr. Bhushan that Dr. Anand is not part of the armed forces. That was an error in the earlier introduction. So we will skip your question that you have raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, Prithvi.
Yeah. And then Anusha is asking for again a question on the same, one dose of SSI and Bharat Biotech. Do the patients get any side effects?
So side effects, ma'am, I mean, with any vaccination, the side effects would be basically some pain at the injection site. In case of the AstraZeneca serum vaccine, it's just a regular thing which you get after any regular vaccination that you might feel a bit feverish, a bit weak, lethargic, but these are common symptoms after any vaccine.
Yeah, thanks, Dr.
Anand, if I may ask you,
Yeah.
without trying to drag you into SIA, because this is your personal presentation.
Sure.
Did the Serum Institute conduct a full phase 3 clinical trial on the Covishield, or are they only relying on the data of AstraZeneca trial from the other parts of the world?
No. So again, just make it clear, this is my own personal capacity and not use of the organization. So Serum has conducted a clinical trial. So basically, what you do is you do what they call as an immunobridging study. So in immunobridging study, what you need to show is basically it's the same vaccine, right? The one which AstraZeneca has and the one which Serum has. So in immunobridging, you basically show that the immune response, which is generated by both the vaccines, is the same. The safety data is similar. So once you establish that both the products are similar, then that the data is applicable. So you don't need to do a separate phase 3 efficacy study in such cases, because doing a separate phase 3 efficacy study is expensive. So you can do an immunobridging study, and once you do an immunobridging study and you show that the immunotiters, the titer levels and the safety is similar, then you don't need to do a separate phase 3 study as per the regulatory requirements.
Thank you.
This is an interesting question, doctor, from Dr. Manjula. Can this vaccine be administered to an individual who has received plasma as RX or COVID?
That's an interesting question, ma'am. I mean, I haven't read any reports on that, so I'm not sure whether I can comment on this. It's an interesting question. I think it should be looked into.
There's a question: is there any nasal vaccine for COVID?
Currently, there is no nasal vaccine for COVID, but there are some companies which are trying to work on it, but that's still in the early developmental stage.
Then there's a question: when would the general public in India get vaccinated for COVID?
Sorry, when will the general public in
General
India?
public in India get vaccinated for COVID.
So I believe now the government is doing a fabulous job and putting in infrastructure. I believe that we should be seeing that by the end of this month, early next month, I guess.
As of now, is there any data if we need the vaccine booster dose every year or so?
So that is again an interesting question because as of now nobody really knows how long the immune response against COVID it lasts. The trials are still underway. I mean, these trials, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna, the trials are still underway, and they'll be following up these patients for at least another year. So when I think maybe after another 6 months, we'll get a better idea on this as to how long the immune response is going to last. But as of now, there's no clear-cut answer to that question.
I think Rashmi and Divya both of them posed the same question: how long the vaccine is going to last, the effect, and what is the efficacy rate? It's almost the same question.
Efficacy rate, like I said, yeah, so efficacy rate based on the published data for AstraZeneca, it's around 70% for Moderna and Pfizer, it is more than 90%.
This from Gopinath: how mRNA will trigger immunity response? Can you kindly brief?
So mRNA, like I mentioned, so the central dogma of biology is like DNA gets converted into mRNA, and mRNA gets converted into protein. So when you give this mRNA vaccine, we have these ribosomes which are present in the cell, and they will help convert that mRNA into the spike protein of the COVID virus. And once that spike protein is produced, then then our immune system will sense that okay, the body has been attacked by COVID, and then that's how they will mount an immune response.
I think most of the chat box questions have been answered. So I'll hand over to Praveen Iyer to take it forward. And also, small request from the BCIC that we have posted the feedback form. Request the participants to kindly share your thoughts on this session. Over to you, Praveen Iyer, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand. You have done the best to declutter the minds, and lay down the entire vaccination in front of us. I also thank all the participants for raising some very interesting questions. And again, thank you, Anand, for answering all of that. On behalf of the BCIC and the Health Committee, we're very grateful that you could make up your time and be with us today, albeit virtually. It will be interesting once we are through this COVID to meet you in person and have some more such interesting sessions. So, wishing you all the very best. And
One question from K. Ravi.
You have a question?
Yeah, K. Ravi.
Yeah, last question.
Yeah, why is the death rate in US and UK much higher than India?
Yeah. So again, yeah, that's again an interesting question. A lot of people are trying to look into that. So there have been different reasons which have been postulated. One reason is that UK and US overall population, the age of the population, it's probably older compared to India. Another reason is due to the higher comorbid conditions which you might see in the population over there. There were some people who were speculating that Indian people, because we take BCG, that might be giving some protection. So these are some of the hypotheses which people are putting forth, but there is no clear-cut black and white answer to that question.
Yeah. Thank you, Anand. And Prithvi, if you can propose a formal vote of thanks to Anand, and we can conclude this session.
Sure, sir. So on behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we like to once again thank Dr. Anand for accepting our invite and spending some time. And we have really learned many things from this, and also thank participants for joining at this hour from 5:30 to 6:30 when all are returning back to home from their offices. And also like to thank Mr. Praveen Iyer for taking this initiative to organize this program under the committee, the pharma and the healthcare. And also on behalf of the office bearers, we like to thank all of you all for joining us for the today's session. Thank you once again to all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.